Here's how to use and form the imperfect tense in Spanish. It's used when describing a habitual, repeating, progressive, or continuous action in the past. In this sense, the action is imperfect because we don't know when or if it finished, which is why it's called the imperfecto in Spanish. In English, you might also hear it called the past continuous or the past progressive. Long story short, for verbs, think of perfect as completed, so the imperfect tense is for actions that are not obviously completed. In English, this usually appears as a was, were, and present participle formation. If you forgot, the present participle is the ing form of a verb, like going or cleaning. So the imperfect in English might be, they were having a party. He was taking his son to the store. I was reading an article. Notice that these actions are continuous. There's no way to tell exactly when they started or stopped. I like to think of the imperfect as setting the scene. Think of how an author might describe certain moments between characters. Chris was watching the movie and Anne was stealing popcorn while he was distracted. The actors on the screen were crying. Apparently, they were leaving each other for the last time. Anne was trying to focus, but she wasn't succeeding. Again, describing a scene in which there is continuous, ongoing action. It's still in the past, though, since we don't say Chris is watching the movie, but rather he was. Let's highlight the imperfect tense by using it in these sentences with one imperfect and one preterite verb. I was reading when you called. Setting the scene with a continuous, ongoing, incomplete action, I was reading. But then you called, and that was that. Your call, in comparison to my reading, was crisp and easy to assign a time to. Maybe it was at, say, 4:30 p.m. I was reading is in the imperfect, and you called is in the preterite. He broke his arm while he was snowboarding. What do you think? Which of these actions is a clear-cut case of finished action, and which was ongoing? That's right. Broke is in the preterite, while he was snowboarding is in the imperfect. The verb to be can be tricky in the imperfect, since in English we rarely say that someone was being. That would be obvious imperfect. We just say someone was. This choice between preterite and imperfect will have to be based on context. So how is this formed in Spanish? As usual, there are rules and exceptions. First, the rules. Step 1. Get the infinitive. Step 2. Drop the ending, just like in regular conjugation. Step 3 changes depending on what letters you removed in Step 2. If your infinitive started out as AR, add these endings. Aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, and aban. If your infinitive started out as ER or IR, add ia, ias, ia, íamos, íais, and ían. Those I's have accent marks instead of dots on top. Just a reminder, what you see in these charts are endings. They are not words yet. They will be added to the stem, which is what you formed in Step 2. How about an example? Viajar means to travel. That's the infinitive already, so Step 1 is done. Step 2, drop the last two letters. Dropping AR gives us the stem via, ending with the letter J. Now for Step 3. Since we dropped AR from the infinitive, now we follow Step 3A, adding those endings to our chart. And we're done. Yo viajaba, I was traveling, or I would travel habitually. Let's do another example. Leer means to read. Step 1. Leer. Step 2, le. Step 3, in this case 3b, leía, leías, leía, leíamos, leíais, and leían. So, los estudiantes leían el libro would be the students were reading the book. How about mentir? In the present tense, it's an E to IE stem changer, but we don't care about that right now. In the imperfect, the first step is to use the infinitive, and the infinitive keeps the original stem, so the imperfect will too. From there, drop the last two letters, which are IR. When they are dropped, we get meant. Since we dropped IR from the infinitive, we go to step 3B, which tells us that IR verbs will get the same endings as ER verbs. So once again, we add the ia, ias endings to our chart. Tú mentías, you were lying. Yo no sabía que tú mentías. I didn't know that you were lying. Yo sabía is the yo form imperfect of the ER infinitive saber, to know. So we have our normal rules and steps. What about irregulars? Luckily, there are only 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect in Spanish. For ir, the imperfect is iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, and iban. For ser, the imperfect is era, eras, era, éramos, erais, and eran. For ver, the imperfect is veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, and veían. On first glance, this verb appears to be regular, doesn't it? But the E from the ending is still here in the conjugation, instead of being dropped in step 2. That's why it's irregular. So there's your challenge. Memorize these irregular verbs, and the steps for forming the regular imperfect as well, and you'll have the whole thing. That's it. You're ready to practice forming and using the imperfect past tense in Spanish. Way to go! You can find more language learning resources, including PDF lessons and videos like this one at lingolearner.com.